An old man is dying in Egypt, and he is about to do something with his hands that nobody in the room understands. He is nearly blind. He sits on the edge of his bed, gathering the last strength of a long life. And his son Joseph, second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt, brings 2 boys to him for a blessing. Joseph arranges them carefully. The firstborn, Manasseh, on the old man's right side, where the greater blessing belongs. The younger on his left. Everything is in order. Then the old man crosses his arms, right hand on the younger boy's head, left hand on the firstborn. Joseph sees it and reaches out, takes his father's wrist, tries to fix the mistake. Father, not this way. This one is the firstborn. And the old man, who cannot see the boys in front of him, answers without moving his hands. I know, my son, I know. Hold that picture, because it hides a question. Decades earlier, another old father sat blind in a tent, unsure which son stood before him. And that day, a young man used his father's blindness to steal a blessing meant for someone else. He wore a disguise on his hands to do it. That young man was this old man. Jacob, the thief, became the giver. The man who once had to take a blessing in the dark became the one man on earth who could not be fooled about where a blessing was going. How does that happen to a person? The answer runs through 8 moments. 8 times the ground shifted under one man's life, from a cooking fire in the desert to a riverbank at midnight. And by the end of them, you will know what God does with the person who keeps wrestling. Go back to the beginning, decades before Egypt, to a camp in the south country near Beersheba, where a woman named Rebecca is pregnant and something is wrong. She can feel it. This is not the ordinary kicking that mothers trade stories about. This is a struggle. 2 lives shoving against each other inside her. Hard enough and strange enough that she goes to ask God what is happening in her own body. And the answer she receives is not comfort. It is a prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will be separated from within you. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Sit with that for a second. Before these brothers have taken one breath, they are already fighting. The wrestling in this story starts in the dark, before birth, before choice, before anybody did anything to anybody. The day comes. The first boy arrives red and covered in hair. So they call him Esau, which the family connected with that rough, rusty look of him. Then the second boy arrives, and the midwife sees something she will tell around fires for the rest of her life. The second child comes out with his tiny hand clamped around his brother's heel, grabbing, from his first second of life, grabbing. So they name him for it, Jacob. In their language, the name carries the sound of the word for heel, and it grew into a nickname that meant something like heel catcher, the one who grabs from behind, the one who takes hold of what is ahead of him and pulls. Some men spend their whole lives trying to live up to their name. Jacob will spend most of his trying to live one down. The boys grow, and they grow in opposite directions. Esau becomes a man of the open field, a skilled hunter, sunburned, loud, the kind of man other men like immediately. He smells like wind and blood and juniper smoke. Jacob stays near the tents. The text calls him a quiet man. And in that world of herdsmen, it meant he was the one watching the flocks, watching the stores, watching everything. Esau lived by his strength. Jacob lived by his attention. Different sons happen in every family. What breaks this family is what the parents do with the difference. Isaac loved Esau. The text gives the reason, and the reason is small and human and a little sad. Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for wild game. The old man loved what his son could bring him. And Rebekah. The scripture says simply, love Jacob. Read that pair of sentences again. Because everything coming is already inside them. A father with a favorite. A mother with a favorite. A house split silently down the middle. Two teams under one roof. And nobody ever says it out loud. And everybody knows. Maybe you grew up in a house like that. Then you already know the air in it. You know how favor gets measured in portions and glances and who gets asked to ride along. You know that a child who feels second learns to study people the way other children study games. Learns where the soft spots are. Learns what can be gotten by waiting. Jacob learned all of it. And over this divided house hangs one thing that cannot be divided. In that world, a father carries something called the blessing. It is more than the inheritance, more than flocks and land. It is the future itself, spoken out loud, placed on one son, and once spoken, it can never be taken back. There is only one, and by every custom of that culture, it already has Esau's name on it. The firstborn gets the blessing. That is the rule. But somewhere in the tents, there is a quiet young man who came into this world holding his brother's heel, who has spent his whole childhood watching, and who has learned the one lesson that will drive the first half of his life. The rule stands between him and everything he wants. And rules, unlike fathers, cannot see who they are talking to. The first shift in the ground comes on an ordinary afternoon, over a pot of stew, and if you did not know what to look for, you would miss that anything happened at all. Here is the scene as Genesis chapter 25 gives it. Jacob is cooking a red lentil stew, thick, heavy with the smell of onions and cumin drifting through the camp, and Esau comes in from the open country. And he is exhausted. Famished is the word. Whatever the hunt was, it went long and it went badly. And he arrives at his brother's fire with nothing in his hands, and that shaky, hollowed-out feeling a man gets when he has pushed his body too far past a meal. He says, "Quick, let me have some of that red stuff. I am starving." Now stop right there and watch Jacob. Because this is the moment the story has been setting up since the heel. Jacob has food. Esau is his brother. In that culture, in that desert, feeding a hungry man was not generosity. It was the flaw. You fed strangers. You certainly fed family. Every custom, every instinct of that world says one thing: fill the bowl. Jacob does not fill the bowl. Jacob looks at his exhausted brother, and somewhere, behind those quiet eyes, an evaluation happens at the speed of hunger. He sees what he has. He sees what Esau has. He sees the distance between a starving man and his own patience. And he answers his brother's plea for food with a sentence that tells you exactly who this young man has become. First, sell me your birthright. The birthright, the firstborn's share, the standing and inheritance rights of the eldest son. The very thing the prophecy whispered about before either of them was born. Esau's whole future is standing in the smoke between them. And Jacob has just put a price tag on lunch. You have to give the moment its full weight. This is not a boy teasing his brother. Jacob says, "Swear to me first." He wants it formal. He wants it binding. Out here, with no witnesses but the fire. He is closing a deal. And Esau, hungry, dramatic, living entirely inside the next 10 minutes, says the words that will follow him for the rest of Scripture. Look, I am about to die. What good is a birthright to me? He swears, he eats. The text wraps the whole transaction in 4 blunt movements. He ate, and drank, and rose, and went his way. And then Genesis adds one final line. And notice who it convicts. So Esau despised his birthright. Be fair to this scene, because it is easy to get it wrong in 2 directions. Jacob exploited his brother's weakest hour, and that is ugly. And the story knows it is ugly. But Esau signed. Nobody held him down. He traded the future for the afternoon, because the afternoon was the only thing he could feel. And Scripture reserves its final verdict for him. For the man who held something sacred and valued it below soup. A deal needs 2 signatures. This one got both. You have seen this trade. Somewhere in your own life, you have watched a person hand away something priceless. A marriage, a calling, 20 years of trust. Because they were hungry right now and the cost was somewhere down the road. The far-off thing never wins that argument. Hunger shouts and the future whispers. But keep your eye on Jacob. Because this afternoon is the first of the 8. The first time the ground moves under his life. And here is what it reveals. Jacob has just learned that the system can be beaten. The rule said the firstborn gets everything. One pot of stew just proved the rule has a back door. He did not use a weapon. He did not raise his voice. He simply waited until wanting something met someone weak enough to give it up. And then he named his price. It worked. That is the dangerous part. It worked. The birthright has changed hands in whatever ledger heaven keeps. But a birthright is paper. The blessing, the spoken blessing, the future placed on a son by a father's own mouth, that still belongs to Esau. And it sits waiting on the lips of an old man who is going blind in his tent. Jacob has beaten his brother at a cooking fire. To get the blessing, he will have to beat his own father, and his father cannot see. Years pass. The stew is old history, the kind of family story nobody retells at dinner. Isaac is old now, and his eyes have failed him, and he has begun to think about the end of his life. He does not know that many years still lie ahead of him. He only knows that the light is gone from his eyes and the strength is going from his body. And a man in that condition puts his affairs in order. So one day he calls for his firstborn son. And the second great shift in Jacob's life begins with a conversation Jacob never hears. "My son," Isaac says to Esau, "I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Take your bow. Go out to the field. Hunt game for me, and make me the rich food I love. Bring it to me to eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die." There it is, the blessing, after all the years. The old man has named the day, but a tent has thin walls, and Rebekah is listening on the other side of one. Watch what this mother does, because the speed of it tells you it was not her first time thinking about this. Before Esau's hunting boots are out of sight, she has found Jacob, and she has the whole plan in her mouth. "Go to the flock. Bring me 2 young goats. I will make the food your father loves. You will carry it in to him, and he will bless you before he dies." And here is the detail worth slowing down for. Jacob hesitates, but listen carefully to why. He does not say, "Mother, this is wrong." He does not say, "This will break my father's heart." He says, "Esau is a hairy man and I am smooth. What if my father touches me? He will know I am mocking him, and I will bring a curse on myself instead of a blessing." Read that objection again. It is not a conscience. It is a risk assessment. The quiet young man from the tents has surveyed the plan, found one flaw in it, and named the flaw. His mother closes the loophole in a single breath. "Let the curse fall on me," she says. "Only obey my voice." So he obeys her voice, in order to fool his father's ears. She cooks the goats into the dish Isaac loves, seasoned the way only decades of marriage can teach. She takes Esau's finest clothes, the ones that hold the smell of fields and open air, and she puts them on her younger son. And then the goat skins. She wraps the fresh skins around Jacob's smooth hands and over the smooth of his neck. And if some part of you flinches at how strange that is, an entire costume built to survive a father's touch, then you have understood the scene. This deception was engineered. Every sense the old man has left. They have prepared an answer for it. Jacob lifts the tray and walks into the dark of his father's tent. "My father," he says. "Here I am," says the old man. "Who are you?" "My son." The tent goes quiet. Everything in this family's future is balanced on the next 4 words. And Jacob says them without stumbling. "I am Esau, your firstborn. Do not rush past it." A son is standing in the dark, 2 feet from an aging father who loves him. A father who believes his own death is near. And he has just answered the simplest question a father can ask. "Who are you?" with another man's name. And he is not done. Isaac wonders how the hunt went so fast. And Jacob reaches for God as part of the con. "The Lord your God granted me success," he says. He pulls heaven itself into the costume. But Isaac is blind, not foolish. Something is wrong in the room, and he can feel it. "Come near," he says, "so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you are really Esau or not." So Jacob steps forward and puts his disguised hands into his father's hands. And the old man reads them slowly, the way the blind read. And then he speaks one of the saddest sentences in the whole Bible. The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. His ears are telling him the truth. His hands are telling him the lie. He has to choose which one to believe. And he chooses the hands. Still, he circles back one last time. One final door held open. "Are you really my son Esau?" And Jacob closes the door himself. "I am." They eat together. The old man asks his son to come near and kiss him. And Jacob kisses him. And Isaac breathes in the smell of Esau's clothes, fields and rain and open country. And the last of his doubt dissolves into memory. And then it comes, the blessing, the real one, spoken aloud and unrepeatable, the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, grain and wine in plenty. Peoples will serve you. Nations will bow to you. Be lord over your brothers. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Every syllable lands on the wrong son, and only 2 people in the world know it. And one of them is wearing goat skin. The words end. Jacob backs out of the darkness with the future in his hands, and the tent flap falls shut behind him. And he is barely out of his father's presence when, in the next line of the text, His brother walks in from the hunt. That is how close it was. That is the margin this family's history turned on. Esau comes in glowing. You can feel it in the text. The hunt went well. The meal is made, and he carries it to the tent with the easy heart of a man arriving at the best day of his life. Sit up, my father, and eat of my game, so that your soul may bless me. And inside the tent, silence, then a voice, thinner than before. Who are you? I am your son, Esau, your firstborn. What happens next to Isaac? Genesis describes with a phrase that should stop you cold. The old man begins to tremble, not a shiver. The Hebrew doubles the word to make it violent. A trembling great beyond great. An earthquake inside an old man's body. Who was it? Then, he says, who hunted game and brought it to me. And I ate it all before you came. And I blessed him. And then the sentence that ends the argument before it can begin. Yes, and he shall be blessed. Understand what those words cost the man saying them. Isaac knows now. In one heartbeat he has seen the whole shape of it. The too fast hunt. The wrong voice. The hands he chose to trust. And he knows exactly which son stood in the dark and did this to him. He could scream. He could revoke. Or try to. Instead, this father, shaking like a struck building, confirms the blessing onto the son who stole it. Because in his world, a spoken blessing is not a document you tear up. It went out of him like an arrow. It cannot come back. Then Esau understands. And the sound he makes is one Genesis refuses to clean up. He cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. A grown man, a hunter, the strong one, wailing in his father's tent like something dying in a trap. Bless me also, O my father. And when the answer comes back that there is nothing left, he asks a question that has echoed for 3,000 years. Have you only one blessing, my father? Then he lifts up his voice and weeps. Whatever you think of Esau, the man who priced his future below a bowl of soup, stand in that tent for 1 minute and hear him. Some losses do not care whose fault they were. They just take everything on the way out. And in the wreckage, Esau finally says his brother's name like a verdict. Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright. And behold, now he has taken away my blessing. The heel catcher, the name was a birth story. Esau has just turned it into a criminal record. Then he stops weeping and starts counting days. The days of mourning for my father are at hand. He says to himself, then I will kill my brother Jacob. Not rage in a flash. A schedule. He believes his father is near the end. And he will wait for the funeral. Out of respect for the old man. And then he will do it. That is the coldest kind of anger there is. The patient kind. And word of it travels through the camp until it reaches the one person who hears everything. Rebekah moves fast one more time. She calls for Jacob. Your brother is consoling himself with the thought of killing you. Flee to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him a few days. She says, a few days, until your brother's fury turns away. And then I will send word and bring you back. A few days, hold on to that phrase, because heaven heard it differently. The road Jacob is about to take will swallow 20 years. And as far as the scriptures record, Rebekah never sees her favorite son again. The mother who built the plan pays for it with the boy. The plan was for So the winner packs, and look hard at what winning bought him. He has the birthright of the firstborn, and he cannot claim an animal from the flocks. He has the blessing of the fatness of the earth, and he is leaving the land. The words were spoken over. He has been named Lord over his brothers, and he is running from one of them in the dark with everything he owns on his back and a walking stick in his hand. Jacob spent his whole young life wanting what was in that tent. Now it is his, every word of it. And by nightfall, he cannot safely sleep in the house where he received it. Follow him out into the dark, because the road he is on runs 500 miles north, and he is walking it alone. Think about what that means for a man of that world. Jacob is no wilderness hunter. That was Esau. Jacob is the man of the tents, the one who kept close to the fires and the flocks and the voices of home. And now, home is a place where his brother is counting down to a funeral and a killing. Behind him, a father he deceived, and a mother he will never see again. Ahead of him, an uncle he has never met, in a country he has never seen. He carries no flocks, no servants, no bride price, nothing. The heir of every promise God ever made to Abraham is on the run with a staff in his hand. The sun goes down on him somewhere in the hill country, near a place called Luz, and he does what a man with nothing does. He finds a stone, puts it under his head, and lies down on the ground under the open sky. Stop and look at him there, because the picture is the whole point. 3 days ago, this man won everything: the birthright, the blessing, the future, all of it his. And here is the winner, sleeping in the dirt with a rock for a pillow, in the exact center of nowhere, at the lowest hour of his life so far. That is where the third shift comes. That is where God chooses to show up for the very first time. Jacob dreams, and in the dream, a stairway stands on the earth with its top reaching into heaven, and the angels of God are ascending and descending on it. Traffic between heaven and this patch of dirt, and above it stands the Lord himself. And he speaks. Now listen to what God says to this particular man on this particular night, because it is the last thing the moment calls for. This is a fugitive, fresh from fraud, still practically smelling of goat skin. And if there was ever a night for heaven to open with an accusation, this is the night. Count what is missing from what God says. There is no mention of the tent, no mention of the stolen blessing, no demand for an accounting. Instead, promise after promise, poured out on a sleeping con man. I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, spreading west and east and north and south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And then a sentence aimed straight at a man alone on the ground. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Wherever you go, keep those 2 words. They are going to matter in a foreign country, in a famine, at the bottom of the hardest years. For the rest of this story, Jacob wakes up in the dark with his heart pounding, and he says something that tells you how far this man still has to travel. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. He is afraid. He calls the place the house of God, the gate of heaven. In the morning he sets up his stone pillow as a pillar, pours oil on it, and names the place Bethel, And then, with the echo of heaven barely faded, Jacob does the most Jacob thing imaginable. He makes a deal. If God will be with me, he says, if he will keep me in this way that I go, if he will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. If, then, God has just handed this man an unconditional promise. No strings, no terms, and Jacob hands back a contract with conditions in it. He hears, I will never leave you, and he answers, let us see how the bread and clothing situation develops. The grabbing hand is still the grabbing hand, even folded in prayer. The stairway did not change him. Understand that. And this whole story opens up. Bethel was not the transformation. Bethel was the commitment. And it was entirely one-sided. And it was God's side. On the worst night of Jacob's life so far, before one thing about him improved, heaven went on record. I am with you. I will keep you. I will bring you back. The rest of this story is that promise. Walking a very long road, Jacob shoulders his pack in the morning light and turns north, toward Haran, toward an uncle named Laban. He thinks he is walking towards safety. He is walking towards school. The road ends at a well. It is midday in the open country outside Haran, and shepherds are gathered there with their flocks, waiting, because the well is capped with a great stone, and the custom is to wait until all the flocks arrive before rolling it away. Jacob falls into conversation with them. Do you know Laban? We know him. Is it well with him? It is well. And look, here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Jacob turns, and everything in the text speeds up. Here is what he does in the next 60 seconds. He walks to the well, and by himself, he rolls away the stone. Then he waters Rachel's entire flock. Then he kisses her, and he lifts up his voice, and he weeps, right there in front of everyone. This careful, calculating, quiet man, crying in the middle of a workday because after 500 miles of running, he has found family. And family looks like her. Love at a well, and a strong back, and tears. Whatever else Jacob is, give him this day. Laban comes running, embraces him, brings him home. A month passes, and then Laban, smiling, generous, says the words that sound like kindness and are actually the opening of a negotiation. Because you are my kinsman, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Jacob has no money, no bride price, nothing a father could weigh in his hand. All he has is his labor and his want. So he puts both on the table. I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. 7 years. In that world, it was an enormous offer. The kind of price a man names when he is not bargaining anymore. And Jacob names it without blinking. Laban accepts with a sentence that is worth exactly nothing. Better I give her to you than to another man. Stay with me. And then Genesis writes one of the most beautiful lines about love in the entire Bible. And it should be heard slowly. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. And they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. 7 years of another man's fields and flocks and heat and frost. And it felt like a few days. Let that stand on its own. Some things in Scripture are just true. And any man who has ever worked hard for the sake of a face he loves knows this one is the 7 years end. Jacob, direct as ever, goes to Laban. Give me my wife, for my time is completed. Laban gathers the men of the place and throws a feast. A real one. Wine and noise and firelight late into the evening. And when the evening is done, the bride is brought to Jacob veiled, as brides in that world were, and she is led into the darkness of his tent. Night falls on the marriage, and Genesis says it in 4 words that land like a hammer on stone. Behold, it was Leah, morning light in the tent, and the woman beside Jacob is not Rachel. It is her older sister. All night, the voice he heard, the presence beside him, he took to be the woman he served 7 years for, and the light comes up and shows him the truth. Laban had switched his daughters in the dark. Now stand very still in this scene, because something is happening here beyond one man's ruined wedding. And the text trusts you to see it without a single word of commentary. A young man once walked into the darkness of a tent, and a blind old father asked, "Who are you?" And the young man used the darkness to pass himself off as the older sibling. And the deception held until it was too late to undo. Genesis never says God punished Jacob by giving him Laban. The text draws no arrow and preaches no sermon. But the man who used darkness and disguise on his own blind father has just spent a wedding night being fooled by darkness and disguise. And the sting of it lands in the exact spot where he once carried the goat skins. The story does not need to explain the irony. The story just holds it up to the light. Jacob storms to Laban in the morning. "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me?" Hear that last word in Jacob's own mouth. Deceived. He knows this word from the inside. And Laban answers with a shrug that cuts to the bone, whether he means it to or not. It is not done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. In our country, Jacob, here, the younger does not shove ahead of the firstborn. Here, we keep the order you broke. Then, smooth as oil, Laban offers the fix that reveals the whole game. Finish Leah's bridal week, and I will give you Rachel too, for 7 more years of work. And Jacob, out of options and still in love, agrees. He marries Rachel a week later and owes another 7 years for a bride he had already earned. The finest deal-maker in Canaan walks out of that negotiation owned. He wanted one wife. He now has 2 sisters under one roof. One loved, one unloved. Both wounded by an arrangement neither of them chose. And 14 years of debt on a contract written by a man who smiles while he cheats. Jacob has finally met someone who plays his own game, and the man plays it better. Settle in now, because the story is about to slow down the way real life slows down, and 20 years are going to pass in this chapter, and you should feel some of their weight. Start inside the house, because the house is where the wrestling lives. 2 sisters, married to the same man. One of them loved, and one of them not. And the text refuses to look away from the one who is not. The Lord saw that Leah was hated. Genesis says, using that blunt old word for being the unloved one, and he opened her womb, and Leah begins to have sons. And the names she gives them are not really names. They are prayers. They are a diary written in children. Her first she calls Reuben, and hear her reason. Because the Lord has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. The second, Simeon, because the Lord has heard that I am hated. The third, Levi. And she says, Now this time my husband will be attached to me, for I have borne him 3 sons, 3 boys, 3 versions of the same sentence. Now he will love me. Now he will love me. Now, surely, he will love me. There may be no quieter heartbreak anywhere in Scripture than the maternity ward of Jacob's household. And then, with her 4th son, something shifts in Leah that the text presents without explanation. She names him Judah and says simply, This time I will praise the Lord. No mention of her husband at all, as if, somewhere between the 3rd son and the 4th, she stopped pitching her hope at a man who could not return it and threw it upward instead. Out of that boy, out of the unloved wife's 4th son, the royal line of Israel will one day come, and eventually a carpenter from Nazareth. God was doing his deepest work in this family through the woman nobody chose. Meanwhile, Rachel, loved and childless, burns, Give me children, or die. She tells Jacob, and Jacob snaps back in anger. Am I in the place of God? The sisters begin to compete through their maidservants, the way Sarah once did, and sons arrive from Bilhah and Zilpah, and every birth is a move in a war. Rachel names one boy Naphtali and says the quiet part out loud. With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. There is that word again. Wrestling. It is not at the river yet. It is in the kitchen, in the bedrooms, in the nursery. Jacob's whole household is a wrestling match with meals. At last, God remembers Rachel. The text says, And she bears a son and names him Joseph. 11 boys and a daughter now. Under the roof of a man who can multiply anything except peace. Now step outside, to the fields, because Jacob is fighting a second war out there. His 14 years for the brides are done, and he stays on for wages. And Laban proceeds to give a masterclass in moving the goalposts. Jacob tends the man's flocks with a shepherd's obsessive care, and the flocks explode, and everyone can see it. And Laban keeps rewriting the deal every time the numbers favor Jacob. Hear Jacob's own summary, given years later to the man's face. You have changed my wages 10 times. 10 times. Stay with that number a moment, because some of you do not have to imagine it. 20 years of doing everything right for someone who keeps changing the rules, showing up early, doing honest work, hitting every mark, and watching the terms shift every time you get close to what was promised. If you have ever worked for a Laban, if you are working for one now, you know the particular exhaustion in this chapter. It is the tiredness of running a race where somebody else keeps moving the finish line. Here is what Jacob does with those years, and it is worth watching closely. He does not quit, and he does not cheat, at least not in the way he once would have. He outworks the injustice. His own description of those 2 decades survives in the text, and it reads like a man showing you his scars. By day, the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. He absorbs the losses when animals are torn by wild beasts. He pays for what is stolen. Whatever else can be said about the heel catcher, the man can work. And God, quietly, keeps the Bethel promise. Whatever scheme Laban tries, the flocks keep breaking Jacob's way, until the man who crossed the Jordan with a staff owns herds and servants and camels and donkeys, and his sons ride out to pasture with their own men. So there he is at the end of 2 decades, wealthy, and stuck, successful and surrounded. His father-in-law resents him. His brothers-in-law mutter that Jacob has taken away all that was our father's. His wives are locked in a cold war. His table seats a small tribe, and there is not one chair of real peace at it. Jacob can grow anything: flocks, wealth, family, everything except the one thing he has been chasing since the womb. A life that is actually blessed instead of merely big. And then one day, after 20 years of noise, a voice he has not heard since a stone pillow at Bethel speaks again. And it says one word that changes everything: return. Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred. The Lord says to Jacob, and I will be with you. Mark this day on the map of the man's life, because a pattern 20 years old just broke. Every road Jacob has ever taken, he took at a run, away from something, away from Esau's knife, away from the wreckage in his father's tent. This road points the other direction. For the first time in his life, Jacob is not running from. He is going back toward the land of the promise, back toward his father's house. And yes, back toward the brother who once scheduled his death. God did not promise the road would be safe. He promised the same thing he promised at Bethel: I will be with you. But watch how Jacob leaves, because the old habits die slow. He does not walk into Laban's tent and announce his departure like a free man. He waits until Laban is 3 days away, shearing sheep, gathers his wives, his children, his flocks, everything he has earned, and slips out the back of the country, 20 years in, and his exits still look like escapes. And one member of the family carries a secret out the door. Rachel, unknown to Jacob, unknown to anyone, has stolen her father's household gods, the little idols of Laban's house, and hidden them in her camel's saddle. Keep that detail in your pocket. It sleeps there for years. And this story does not waste details. 3 days pass before Laban hears. Then he takes his kinsman and hunts the caravan like a man chasing stolen property. 7 days hard pursuit. And he closes in on Jacob in the hill country of Gilead. And the night before he reaches them, God comes to Laban in a dream with a single sentence of warning. Be careful that you say nothing to Jacob, either good or bad. Understand what just happened. The same God who met Jacob on the way out, at Bethel, has now stepped into the path of the man's enemy on the way back. Wherever you go was not poetry. It was policy. So the two men finally face each other in the mountains. And what unfolds is nothing less than a trial in the open air. Laban prosecutes first, and he is good at it. Wounded fatherhood in full performance. Why did you flee secretly? Why did you drive away my daughters like captives of the sword? You did not even let me kiss my grandchildren goodbye. And then the real charge underneath the theater. Why did you steal my gods? Jacob, innocent of that one thing and ignorant of Rachel's saddle, issues a death sentence without knowing whose name is on it. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. So Laban searches, tent by tent, and comes at last to Rachel, who sits on the saddle with the idols beneath her and tells her father she cannot rise. And the search finds nothing. The deceiver's daughter deceives the deceiver. And somewhere far off, you can almost hear this family's whole history rhyming with itself. And then it happens. The moment this chapter exists for, Jacob becomes angry. The text says, and for the first recorded time in his entire life, This man stands flat-footed in front of someone who has wronged him and empties 20 years of grievance into the open air. No scheme, no disguise, no backdoor, just the truth at full volume. What is my offense? What is my sin? That you have hotly pursued me. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. You have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father had not been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. Stand back and look at that speech. The young Jacob handled his problems in the dark. With costumes and cooking pots and quiet leverage, this Jacob stands in daylight, names the injustice out loud to its face, and puts his case in God's hands instead of his own. It is not the river yet. It is not the new name. But a man who spent his whole life maneuvering has just done something he has never done before. He told the truth, loudly, to the person it was about. Even Laban has nothing left after that. The two men pile up stones for a witness, swear a boundary between them. This heap is a witness that I will not pass over to harm you, and you will not pass over to harm me. And they share a meal on the mountain. In the early morning, Laban kisses his daughters and his grandchildren and goes home, out of Jacob's life for good. One door has closed clean behind him. 20 years of Haran, finished. But the road home runs south. And south has a name in it that Jacob has been careful not to say out loud for 2 decades. Esau. The first thing Jacob does as he comes toward the border country is send messengers ahead. And the message he puts in their mouths tells you exactly how afraid he already is. Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, your servant Jacob says, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. And I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight. My lord Esau, your servant Jacob. Read those titles again and remember what the stolen blessing said. Be lord over your brothers. 20 years later, the man who took that blessing is handing the lordship back in the first sentence, bowing in writing before he has even seen his brother's face. The messengers ride south. Days pass. Then they return, and they bring back exactly one piece of information, and it is the worst sentence Jacob has ever heard. We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. Nothing else. No greeting returned. No message. No hint of the heart behind it. Just a number. 400 men is not a family reunion. 400 men is a raiding force, the size of a small army. The kind of company you gather when you intend to be obeyed or to bury someone. 20 years ago, this brother said, I will kill Jacob. And now he is on the road with 400 men, and the distance between them is shrinking by the hour. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. The text says, and for once the words feel too small. The old machine spins up one last time, because fear runs Jacob straight back to what he knows. And what he knows is calculating. He divides everything he has, the people, the flocks, the herds, the camels, into 2 camps. And the logic behind the split is as cold as arithmetic gets. If Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. He is pricing his own family in halves. He is planning which loved ones he can afford to lose. But then, in the middle of the maneuvering, Jacob stops and does something 20 years in Haran taught him. He prays, and this prayer deserves to be heard in full, because there is not one condition in it, not one if, not one clause of the old Bethel contract. Listen to a frightened man telling God the plain truth. O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. I am not worthy. Hold that phrase up against everything you know about this man. The grabber of heels, the wearer of goat skins, the winner of every negotiation he ever entered, is on his knees at the border of the promised land, saying the one sentence his whole life has been built to avoid. I did not earn this. It is the truest thing he has ever said to God. And he says it with an army coming. Prayer finished. Jacob goes back to work, because he is still Jacob. And he builds one final masterpiece of management. He assembles a gift for Esau of staggering size. 550 animals, goats and ewes and camels and cows and donkeys. And he splits it into waves, drove after drove, each with servants instructed to say the same words when Esau meets them. These belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau. And behold, he is behind us. Wave after wave of wealth breaking over an approaching army. And Jacob says the strategy out loud to himself. I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. Perhaps all the flocks in the world. And the plan still ends in perhaps. Night comes down on the camp by the river Jabbok, and in the dark, Jacob rises and takes his 2 wives, his 2 servants, his 11 children, everything and everyone he loves, and he sends them across the ford, over to the far side of the water. The text does not explain why. Maybe safety. Maybe he simply could not be what he was about to be, with his family watching. The last servant crosses. The sound of the water settles. On the near bank, in the darkness, there is one figure left, and Jacob was left alone. Count what is gone. The mother who planned for him, the father he deceived, the uncle he outlasted, the wives, the sons, the flocks, the 2 camps, the 550 animals. Every buffer and bargaining chip and human shield he has spent a lifetime assembling. All of it is on the other side of the river now. For the first time since a stone pillow at Bethel, it is just Jacob and the night, and out of that night, someone takes hold of him. Genesis tells it in one sentence, and the sentence gives you almost nothing. And the almost nothing is the point. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. A man. That is all the text says at first. No lightning, no announcement, no name. Out of the darkness by the Jabbok, hands take hold of Jacob. And Jacob does what Jacob has done since the womb. He takes hold back, Do not rush to explain who this is. The story itself does not rush. It starts in mystery on purpose, because that is how the night felt from inside it. A stranger's grip in the dark, breath and dust and the cold sound of the river, and a struggle that does not end. Only as the hours burn away does Jacob begin to understand that the one he is holding is more than a man. And by morning he will say he has seen the face of God. Let the night reveal itself at its own speed. It did for him. And think about what this particular fight means for this particular man. Jacob has never won anything with his body. He won with his head. The stew was a calculation. The blessing was a costume. 20 years at Haran were a long game of patience and breeding stock and leverage. Every victory of his life came from an angle. And here in the dark, there are no angles. You cannot disguise yourself to someone whose hands are on you. You cannot negotiate while you are being thrown. For the first time in his life, the smartest man in every room is in a contest with nothing to think his way out of. There is only grip and weight, and the question of whether he will let go. He does not let go. All night, hour after hour after hour. A man past 90 years old wrestles a stranger to a standstill, and the sky begins to gray toward morning. And then the text records the strangest detail in the whole scene. The stranger does not overpower him. Instead, when he sees that he does not prevail against Jacob, he touches Jacob's hip socket. Touch it. That is the word. Not strikes, not breaks. Touch. And the hip goes out of joint. Understand what that touch tells you. Whoever this is could have ended the fight in the first second of it. All night long. The outcome was never in doubt to anyone but Jacob. The stranger was not trying to win. He was letting a man wrestle, letting him spend everything, letting him hold on with both hands until holding on was all that remained. And then, with one finger's worth of power, he showed Jacob how the whole night could have gone. So now the strong grip is gone. The hip is wrenched. The leg will not bear him. And Jacob cannot fight anymore. All he can do is hang on. And the stranger says, "Let me go, for the day breaks." And Jacob, crippled, exhausted, beaten, in every way a man can be beaten except one, answers with the sentence his entire life has been building toward, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." There it is, the same hunger that reached out of the womb, that priced a bowl of stew, that walked into a blind man's tent. He is still after the blessing. He has always been after the blessing. But here, what is different now? Because everything is different now. No costume, no leverage, no brother's clothes, and no goat skin on his hands. Just a lamed man in the dirt, holding on to someone stronger than himself. Asking, for the first time in his life, Jacob is trying to get a blessing the honest way, by asking the one who can give it, as himself. And then the stranger asks a question. "What is your name?" Freeze this. Stand here, because two scenes are about to touch across 20 years of road. The last time a voice in the dark asked this man to identify himself. He was standing in his father's tent with dressed meat in his hands. "Who are you?" "My son." And he answered, "I am Esau, your firstborn." He got a blessing that night by saying another man's name. Now, in another darkness, the question has come back for him. What is your name? And there is no costume left, and there is nowhere to maneuver. And the man in the dirt opens his mouth and says the word he has been outrunning his whole life. Jacob, heel catcher, grabber, cheat. That is not just an answer. It is a confession. The whole record in 2 syllables. And this is the moment. Not the stew, not the ladder, not the wages. This one, right here. A broken man in the dark, telling the truth about who he is, with his hands still gripping the only one who can change it. And the stranger says, "Your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed." Israel, he strives with God. The name does not erase the fight. It enshrines it. God does not name him something peaceful, something finished, the calm one, the settled one. He names him the wrestler, as if to say, the striving was not the shame of your life. Held on to the right opponent. It was the glory of it. Jacob asks the stranger's name in return, and gets no answer. Only a blessing, given at last. Given freely, given to a man using his real name. And the sun rises, and the stranger is gone. And Jacob stands up alone on the riverbank and names the place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is delivered." Then he crosses toward his family, and the text adds one last detail, small and permanent. The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. He will walk that way for the rest of his life. The blessing came with a wound, and the wound is not a punishment. It is a signature, every step from now on. The strongest thing about Jacob will be the thing that was broken. He received a new name in a single night. Learning to live inside that name will take the rest of his life. Morning, full light now, and Jacob lifts his eyes. And there they are, Esau, coming, and 400 men with him. No more rivers to cross, no more night to hide in. The thing he has feared for 20 years is walking toward him over open ground. And Jacob does one final piece of arranging, the old reflex firing one last time. He lines up his family behind him, the servants and their children first, Leah and her children next, Rachel and Joseph last and farthest from danger. The order of his heart laid out in marching order for everyone to see. But notice where Jacob himself goes. He went on before them. In front, the man who once split his camp to calculate acceptable losses, who sent waves of livestock ahead of him as a buffer, who has spent his entire life putting something between himself and every threat, walks out past all of it and puts his own limping body first in line. If the swords come out, they reach him before they reach anyone he loves. Whatever happened at that river, this is the first fruit of it. The schemer is standing in front, and as he goes, he bows himself to the ground 7 times. 7 times, the full protocol of a vassal approaching a king, a servant approaching a lord. With his ruined hip, each bow costs him something, and he pays it 7 times over, closing the distance to the brother whose blessing said, "To be lord over your brothers." Jacob is acting out the surrender of every word he stole. Now watch Esau, because nobody in this story, not Jacob, not the reader, not anyone, is ready for what Esau does. Esau ran to meet him. Ran. The armed man, the wronged man, the man who once counted the days to his father's funeral so the killing could start, breaks into a run toward his brother, and there is no sword in the picture. He ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. Stand back from that verse. Two old men, grey in their beards, holding on to each other in the open country and crying. 400 soldiers standing around with nothing to do. 20 years of fear and guilt and rehearsed apologies dissolving into something no one planned. The speech Jacob had surely prepared. The careful words, whatever they were, none of them get used. His brother's arms make them unnecessary. Esau looks up at the crowd of women and children. Who are these with you? Children God has graciously given your servant. Jacob answers, and the mothers and sons come forward in their waves, bowing, and then Esau asks about the parade of livestock that has been washing over him all morning. What do you mean by all this company that I met? To find favor in the sight of my Lord, Jacob says, and Esau's answer settles the question of what 20 years have done to the hunter. I have enough. My brother, keep what you have for yourself. My brother, not my servant. Though Jacob keeps saying, my Lord, Esau reaches straight past all the protocol and picks up the one word Jacob has been afraid to hope for. But Jacob presses him. Something in Jacob needs this gift received, needs it more than Esau needs the animals. And if you have been listening to this whole story, you already know why before he says it. Hear the exact words the text gives him. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. My blessing, of all the words this man could have chosen for a herd of goats and camels, he reaches for that one. The man who took the blessing is standing in front of the brother he took it from, pressing wealth into his hands and calling it my blessing. Please, take it. Genesis does not stop to tell you what it means. Neither will we. The word lands where it lands, and Esau, urged, finally accepts, and somewhere in that exchange, something 20 years old finishes breaking open. And yet the ending of this meeting deserves a careful look, because the story stays honest right through its sweetest scene. Esau, warm, expansive, offers to travel together, offers to leave some of his men as an escort, and Jacob demurs. The children are frail. He says, the flocks are nursing. You go ahead to Seir, and I will follow at my own pace. Then Esau rides south towards Seir, and Jacob turns and goes a different direction entirely, west, to Succoth, and there is no record that he ever went to Seir at all. A new name does not delete old reflexes. The man is changed, truly, and the man is still careful, still managing, still keeping a little distance between himself and even a brother who wept on his neck. Both of those things are true at once. And this story will keep insisting that both things can be true at once, because that is how change actually works in a human life. The brothers part in peace. The fear that governed 20 years is gone. Jacob limps west into the promised land. Home, at last. A new name on him and an old family around him. And the next season of his life will test which one runs deeper. If this story were a movie, it would end at the embrace. Two brothers weeping, the music swelling, the sun high over the reconciled family. Roll credits. Genesis is not a movie. Genesis keeps the camera running. Jacob settles near the city of Shechem, buys land, builds, and even raises an altar there and names it after the God of Israel. planting his new name in the soil like a flag. And it is there, in the shadow of that altar, that his family walks into the darkest chapter of its story. His daughter Dinah, Leah's girl, goes out to visit the women of the land, and the prince of the region, a young man named Shechem like his city, sees her and takes her and violates her. Scripture says it plainly and does not look away, and neither should we, though we will speak of it with the care it deserves. A daughter of this family is assaulted, and her pain sits at the center of everything that follows. And the text never once blames her, and no telling of this story ever should. Word reaches Jacob, and here the text records something that should trouble you. Jacob held his peace. His sons are in the field, and the father of the violated girl sits silent, waiting, managing, careful even now, even here. Whatever is happening inside him, what the family sees is a father who does not rise up for his daughter. Her brothers rise instead. Simeon and Levi, Leah's sons, Dinah's full brothers, come in from the field, burning, and what they do next is a deception worthy of the family name, and bloodier than anything the family has done. The prince's household comes asking for marriage, offering any bride price. The brothers answer deceitfully. The text says, that same old family word, and they set a condition wrapped in religion. And when the men of the city are weakened by complying with it, on the third day, Simeon and Levi walk through Shechem with swords and kill every male in the city, and take their sister out of the prince's house. And the other brothers plunder what is left. An entire city, dead, in vengeance carried out by the sons of the man who was just renamed at the river. And Jacob's response, when it comes, is the most revealing sentence in the chapter. He says to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me, making me stink to the inhabitants of the land. My numbers are few, and if they gather against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." Count the words, me, my, I, 5 times in one breath. A city is dead. His daughter is traumatized. His sons have become killers. And the first recorded speech of the newly named Israel is a risk assessment about his own safety. The brother's answer cuts back at him, and then the scene simply ends. Unresolved. Hanging. Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Genesis offers no tidy close to this chapter, and honesty requires that we do not invent one. So stand in the wreckage for a moment and say what this part of the story is actually saying. The river was real. The name was real. The limp. The confession in the dark. The tears on Esau's neck. All of it was real. And this is real too. The man came home from Peniel into a household still shaped by everything he was before Peniel. The favoritism, the maneuvering, the deceit that his sons learned by watching. And a new name on the father did not rewrite the habits of the family. Transformation had come to Jacob. It had not finished with him, and it had barely begun with his house. Maybe you know this season from the inside. A real encounter with God, a genuine new beginning, the honest sense that something changed. And then you came home, and the old problems were still sitting in the kitchen where you left them. The temper still flared, the marriage still limped, the kids still carried what they learned in the worst years, and a voice whispered that the change must have been fake, because if it were real, everything would be fixed. This chapter of Jacob's life exists to answer that voice. The change was real. The wreckage was also real. A new name is not an eraser. It is a direction. And a direction takes a lifetime to walk. And some of the walking goes straight through the consequences of who you used to be. Jacob is Israel now. His house is still Jacob's house. And God is not finished. Because the next word from heaven does not send this battered family forward to somewhere new. It sends them back. God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Bethel. Say the name slowly and let the years roll backward. A stone pillow. A stairway crowded with angels. A frightened young fugitive with nothing but a staff. Bargaining with heaven. If you feed me, if you clothe me, if you bring me home. 30 years have passed since that night. The boy who slept there is an old man now, with a limp and a tribe and a lifetime of road behind him. And the voice that spoke above the stairway says, "Come back to where we started." Something settles in Jacob when he hears it. After Shechem, after the blood and the fear and the silence, here, at last, is a word he knows how to follow. And before the family moves 1 mile, he stands up in the middle of his household and gives an order no one has ever heard from him before. "Put away the foreign gods that are among you, and purify yourselves, and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, so that I may make there an altar to the God who answers me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone. Put away the foreign gods." Hear what that command admits. There are idols in this camp. Rachel's stolen household gods, hidden since Haran in a camel's saddle. And who knows what else the caravan gathered along the way. Little silver insurance policies against the God of Bethel not coming through, however long they have been riding in the baggage. Today is the day they stop. They bring him the idols, all of them, and the rings from their ears. And Jacob buries the whole collection under the terebinth tree near Shechem and walks away from the whole. The bargainer is done keeping backup gods. Whatever this family is now, it will be that in front of one God only, and they travel, and a terror from God falls on the cities around them so that no one pursues them. The sons of Shechem's slaughter, walking untouchable through the land, protected by grace they did not earn. And they come to Bethel, and Jacob builds the altar. God appears to him again, blesses him again, confirms the name again. "Your name is Jacob. No longer shall your name be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." The promise given to Abraham, the land, the nations, the kings to come. God lays it all on him one more time, at the exact spot where he laid it on a boy with a stone under his head. The circle closes. The runaway came back. The one-sided promise of 30 years ago, "I will keep you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land," is standing there fulfilled in the shape of an old limping man surrounded by a tribe. If the story stopped here, it would be sweet. It does not stop, because life does not. They leave Bethel, and on the road south, still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel goes into labor, and the labor is hard, and it kills her. She lives long enough to see her second son and to name him out of her dying, Benoni, son of my sorrow, and Jacob, holding his newborn beside his dying wife, overrules the name with the only mercy left to give, Benjamin. He calls the boy, son of my right hand. He will not let his son carry a funeral in his name forever. Rachel dies on the roadside. The woman at the well. The face that made 7 years feel like a few days. The love that half of this man's life was organized around. Gone in the dust between two towns. And Jacob buries her right there on the way to Ephrath, and sets a pillar over her tomb. He has raised pillars before. At Bethel. At Mizpah. Stones marking encounters and covenants. This one marks the grave of his heart. And the road keeps going. Because roads do. And it carries him at last to Hebron. To Mamre. To a tent he left half a lifetime ago. Isaac is still alive. The blind old father whose hands were fooled by goatskin has lived all these decades. And the text gives us no reunion speech. No recorded words between them at all. It gives us only the ending. Isaac breathed his last, and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. And then one line, easy to read past, worth the whole chapter. And Esau and Jacob his sons buried him, both names, side by side at the mouth of the cave of Machpelah, lowering their father's body into the ground together. The hunter and the heel catcher, the cheated and the cheat, the two boys who wrestled before they were born, standing at the same grave with the same dirt on their hands. Whatever was left unsaid between them stays unsaid. The text just puts them shoulder to shoulder one last time and lets the picture speak. Two graves in one chapter. The wife he chose, and the father he deceived. Jacob is the patriarch now. There is no generation standing between him and the sky. And the heaviest grief of his life has not even arrived yet. Every sorrow so far in this story came at Jacob from the outside. Laban cheated him. Esau threatened him. Death took Rachel. This one is different. This one, he plants himself, waters himself, and grows in his own field. Jacob loved Joseph more than any other of his sons. The text states it that boldly. Joseph, Rachel's firstborn, the son of the loved wife, the child of his old age. And Jacob does not even try to hide the preference. He has a garment made for the boy, a richly ornamented robe, the kind of coat you do not work in, a walking announcement that this son is not like the other sons. 10 brothers watched Joseph wear their father's heart on his body every single day. Now, ask where you have seen this before. A household split by favoritism. A parent who loves one child visibly more. Isaac loved Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. And that crack ran through the middle of everything and ended in deceit and exile and 20 years of ruin. Jacob was the boy that favoritism shaped. He knows exactly what it costs. The way a burned man knows fire. And he does it anyway, to his own sons. Here is one of the saddest truths this story tells. And it tells it without raising its voice. The patterns that wound us are the very ones we repeat, unless something intervenes. And even then, even after Peniel, even with a limp to remind him every morning, the old family disease runs down into the next generation through the hands of the man who suffered most from it. The brothers hated Joseph, the text says, and could not speak peacefully to him. The boy's dreams of sheaves bowing and stars bowing pour fuel on it. And one day Jacob sends Joseph out to check on his brothers, pasturing the flocks near Shechem. That name again. That country of bad memory. And the boy in the beautiful coat walks over the horizon. And the next thing Jacob knows of his son is the coat coming back without him. His sons carry it in. And the thing they have done to that garment was done deliberately. They slaughtered a goat and dipped the coat in its blood. And they hand the wreckage to their father with a sentence engineered in its cruelty. Whether they measured it or not, this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. Please identify. Examine the evidence. Old man, tell us what your eyes see. Stand where Jacob is standing and feel the machinery of this moment close around him. A goat, slaughtered for its part in a deception. Agarmin, used to make a father believe a lie. A blind spot, exploited by sons who know exactly where it is. Decades ago, a young man wrapped goat skins on his arms and carried his brother's clothes into a blind father's tent, and made that father believe a son was present who was not. Now, 10 sons stand in front of Jacob with a goat's blood and a son's clothes, and they make their father believe a son is dead who is not. The text does not point at the symmetry. It does not have to. The tools of the old deception have come home. And this time the deceived man is Jacob, and the lie enters him like a blade and stays. It is my son's robe, he says. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tears his own garments and puts sackcloth on his body and mourns for his son many days. All his sons and daughters rise up to comfort him. The very sons whose hands did this, standing in a circle around his grief, offering comfort for a wound they inflicted. And Jacob refuses it all. No, he says, I shall go down to Sheol to my son. Mourning, his life folds shut around the loss. The text moves on to other things. To Egypt. To a slave Tsaravan. To a boy in a foreign house. But it leaves Jacob exactly there. In the sackcloth. In the silence. And here the story asks you to do the hardest thing it has asked yet. Let the years pass without relief. Because they did. Not a season of grief. Not a hard winter. Year after year after year. The ordinary machinery of a household grinding on around a man with a hole in the middle of him. Sons marry. Grandchildren come. Flocks lamb in the spring. And every day of all of it. Somewhere in Jacob is a room with a bloody coat in it, and a door he cannot close. Some of you are carrying a grief like that right now. The kind that does not resolve. The kind you simply learn to walk beside. And if that is you, then you know something true about this stretch of Jacob's life that no one who has not carried it can fully know. The man limps on one side and grieves on the other. And heaven, for years, says nothing. More than 20 years. By the time the story is done counting, and then a famine comes. Severe in all the lands. The text says, reaching into Canaan, emptying the storehouses. And Jacob hears a rumor that changes the family's direction one more time. There is grain in Egypt. He sends 10 sons south to buy bread. He keeps Benjamin, Rachel's last boy, home where nothing can happen to him, because this old man has learned to guard the little that is left. He has no idea what is waiting for his sons in Egypt. He has no idea who is waiting. The sons come back from Egypt with grain, and with a story that makes no sense. The Lord of the land spoke harshly to us. They tell their father, he accused us of being spies. He kept Simeon in prison. And he says, we cannot see his face again unless we bring our youngest brother down to prove our words. And Jacob hears one thing in all of it. And he answers out of the oldest wound in the house. You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. He refuses. For a long time he refuses, while the grain sacks empty and the famine tightens like a fist. It takes starvation itself. And Judah, Leah's fourth son, stepping forward to pledge his own life as surety for the boy. Before the old man finally lets go of the last child of Rachel, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved, he says, and sends Benjamin south. And every parent who has ever released a child into a danger they could not control knows exactly how long that road is for the one who stays home. Then, silence, days of it, and one afternoon, dust on the horizon, and the caravan returns, all of them, Simeon, Benjamin, all 11. And they are shouting something before they even reach the tents. And the words they are shouting are impossible. Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. The text says Jacob's heart went numb, for he did not believe them. Of course he did not. That door had been closed for more than 20 years. There is a blood-stained coat on the other side of it, and a grief that reorganized his entire life. You do not reopen a door like that because of shouting. Hope, at his age, is a luxury that costs too much when it fails. So they talk, all of them at once, telling him everything Joseph said. And then Jacob looks past his sons, and he sees the wagons, Egyptian wagons, heavy ones, stamped with the authority of Pharaoh himself, loaded with provisions and standing in front of his tents, sent to carry an old man's household down to Egypt. Words can lie. His sons have lied to him before, with evidence in their hands. But no one fakes the wagons of a king. Somebody with the power of Egypt behind him wants this particular old shepherd brought south with care. When he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the text says, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, as if something in him had been dead for 20 years and just took a breath. And the old man stands up in the middle of his stunned family and says one of the simplest sentences in all of Genesis. It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. And here the ground shifts under Jacob's life for the final time. And notice how differently it moves now. The first shift came at a cooking fire, where a young man priced his brother's hunger. This last one comes in an old man's decision to rise up and go toward his son. The ground used to move because Jacob grabbed something. Now it moves because he lets go of everything. The land, the tents, the graves, the whole geography of the promise. To look at one face again before he dies. But watch what he does on the way. Because this is not the young Jacob fleeing in the night. The caravan travels south and stops at Beersheba, the old family altar ground, the place where Isaac built altars and where a boy named Jacob once lived before any of this began. And there Jacob offers sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac, and he waits. He is asking first. Feel the weight of that. The man who once left this very region in secret, at a run, consulting no one, now stands at the edge of the promised land and will not cross out of it until God speaks. Leaving Canaan is no small thing for this family. Abraham went down to Egypt once, and it nearly ended in disaster. Fame or no Faman, Joseph or no Joseph, Jacob has learned where his life actually rests, and it is not in wagons. And God speaks. in visions of the night. And hear how he begins. Jacob, Jacob. And the old man answers the way the faithful answer in this book. Here I am. I am God, the God of your father. The voice says, do not be afraid to go down to Egypt next, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. And Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. I myself will go down with you. 30 years ago at Bethel, to a runaway with a stone for a pillow. The promise was, I am with you wherever you go. The runaway is an old man now, and the promise has not aged a day. It followed him to Haran, through Laban's fields, across the Jabbok, and now it walks ahead of him into Egypt itself. And one more mercy rides inside the words. Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. The son he mourned as torn by animals will be the one standing at his deathbed. God does not just permit this journey, he signs it. So they go down, the whole clan together. 66 souls, by the text's own count of those who traveled with him, plus the wives and the wagons and the flocks. And in the land of Goshen the moment arrives. Joseph harnesses his chariot, the second man of Egypt riding out to meet a shepherd caravan. And when he sees his father, he falls on his neck and weeps on his neck a good while. The text measures the embrace in time, not in words. A good while, more than 20 years of a closed door, held open at last, and an old man's arms around the son whose coat he buried. And Jacob says, now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive. But he does not die. He has one audience left to give, and it is the strangest scene in his whole long story. Joseph brings his father in and presents him before Pharaoh. Stop and see this room. On one side, the king of Egypt, throned in gold at the center of the world's power. A ruler, his own people, honored as something more than a man. On the other side, an ancient foreign shepherd, leaning on his staff. A man whose trade the Egyptians looked down on. A refugee living on this king's grain and this king's goodwill. Every rule of that world says the shepherd bows and blesses no one. And Jacob blesses Pharaoh. The text says it twice, at the entrance and at the exit. The visit framed in blessing. In between, Pharaoh asks the old man a courteous question. How many are the days of the years of your life? And Jacob answers with a sentence that no one polishing a hero story would ever have written. The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers. Few and evil. There is the whole road, told true to a king. He does not stand in that throne room and perform a victory. He does not say, I fought and I won, and God rewarded me. He says, it has been hard. My years were fewer than my father's years, and they were harder. And I am a man still on a journey, sojourning even now. It may be the most honest thing anyone says to a throne in the entire Bible. And then this man with the hard years and the ruined hip lifts his hands over the ruler of Egypt and blesses him, and walks out. Look at what is standing in that doorway, because the whole story is standing in it. He owns nothing in this country. He commands no armies. He came here hungry. By every measurement, Egypt knows how to make. He is the smallest man in the room, and he is the one giving the blessing, because a blessing was never drawn from a bank account or a bloodline or a title. It comes from a life that has finally learned where blessing comes from. The young man stole one because he thought it had to be taken. The old man gives one away to a king, because somewhere across all those years he became the kind of man who has enough to give. 17 years he lives in Goshen after that, watching his grandchildren grow in the good land, fed by the son he thought was dead. And then word comes to Joseph one day, "Behold, your father is ill." You have been in this room before. It is where we started, but come into it slowly this time, knowing everything you now know. Because the scene you saw at the beginning of this story was only the surface of it. Jacob is 147 years old, and he is dying. And when he hears that Joseph has come, the text says, Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. Both names in one man, right to the end. The old striver and the new name, gathering themselves together for the last work of his life. Because that is what this is, not a farewell. Work, the most important work a patriarch does, and he intends to do it with his eyes open, even though his eyes have failed. Notice that first, and let it settle. The eyes of Israel were dim with age. The text says, so that he could not see, blind. At the end, exactly as his own father was blind. The circle that began in Isaac's dark tent has come all the way around. And everyone in this story knows what happened last time. A blind old man reached out to bless a son. Joseph stands before his father with his two boys, Manasseh the firstborn and Ephraim the younger. And Jacob begins to talk, and what he chooses to remember, out of 147 years, tells you where his treasure ended up. God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me. Luz, the old name for Bethel, of everything that ever happened to him. The wealth, the wives, the victories over Laban, the reconciliation with Esau. The old man reaches back and pulls out a stone pillow and a stairway and a promise made to a fugitive who had earned nothing. That is the story he wants the grandchildren to inherit. And he tells one more memory, unprompted, the one that never healed. Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan on the way, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, still on his heart. Decades later, at the door of death. The text lets him say it and does not explain it, because love needs no explanation. Then Jacob claims the two boys as his own sons, granting Egyptian-born grandchildren full standing among the tribes of Israel. And Joseph brings them close for the blessing. And Joseph, careful, dutiful Joseph, arranges everything correctly. Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand. Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand. The firstborn to the strong right side, the younger to the left. Order, custom, law, all of it lined up the way the world lines things up. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, crossing his hands, on purpose. The text even pauses to make sure you know it was no accident of blindness, adding, although Manasseh was the firstborn, Joseph sees it and it displeases him, and he takes hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. And his father refused. The text says, and answered, I know, my son, I know. Now you know what those 4 words are carrying. This is the man who stood in a dark tent wearing goatskins on his hands, because a blind father's blessing was aimed at the firstborn, and he was not the firstborn. He spent his youth believing a blessing had to be stolen, because the order of the world said it could never come to the younger son honestly. Then he spent 100 years learning, at the cost of a hip and a home and half of everything he loved, that God's blessing never did run on the world's rails. It came to him at Bethel when he deserved exile. It found the unloved wife and made her son the royal line. It reached into an Egyptian prison and pulled a slave onto the second throne of the land. Younger sons, second places, broken people, wrong choices by every human measure, and grace moving through all of it, like water finding its way downhill. Nobody needs to explain the crossed hands to Jacob. Jacob is the crossed hands. His whole life is the right hand of God, resting deliberately on the wrong head. And now, at the very end, blind, exactly as his father was blind. He does freely and knowingly what his own father did, only because he was deceived. He blesses the younger, and no goatskin on earth could fool this man about which boy is under which palm, because he is the one person in history who checked. The deceiver has become impossible to deceive. That is what a lifetime of wrestling with God produces. Sight that does not need eyes. So the blessing flows. And hear the words he lays on the boys, because in them the old man finally says out loud who God has been to him all along. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. The God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the boys, my shepherd, all my life long. The man spent decades as a shepherd himself, guarding flocks through heat and frost and loss, absorbing the cost of every lamb that was torn. Now, at the end, he looks back down the whole hard road. The fire at Beersheba, the stone at Bethel, the 14 years for 2 brides, the river in the dark, the bloody coat, the wagons, and he gives the road a shape. Somebody was guarding me the whole time. Somebody absorbed my losses. Even the years that felt evil. Even the wages that changed 10 times. Even the famine. I was being kept, wherever I went, exactly as the voice above the stairway said. Then he calls the other sons, all 12, and one by one, this father does what no patriarch in Genesis ever managed before him. He blesses every single one of them. Abraham's household split between Isaac and Ishmael. Isaac's blessing tore Esau from Jacob and set 20 years of exile in motion. In this family, blessing was always a knife that divided brothers, a prize with one winner and a house full of losers. And that knife cut Jacob deeper than anyone alive. Not this time. Each son hears his father's voice speak over him, each according to his own blessing. The text says, some words hard and honest, some shining. Judah's carrying a scepter that will not depart until the one comes to whom it belongs. 12 sons, 12 blessings, no costumes, no theft. No one crouched outside the tent in tears. The man who grew up in a house with only one blessing dies making sure his own house never knows that famine. He gives his last instruction. Bury me with my fathers in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham lies, and Sarah, and Isaac, and Rebekah. And there I buried Leah. Leah, hear that. Rachel sleeps by the road to Ephrath, under her pillar. And Jacob will lie down for eternity beside Leah, the unloved one, the morning surprise, the wife of the open eyes. The text offers no comment, and neither can anyone, except to notice that the man's last recorded plan places him next to the woman his whole younger self overlooked. In the tomb of the promise, in the land God swore to give. Then the text closes his life with a single quiet verse. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. He drew up his feet into the bed. Even his dying is described as something he did. One last deliberate motion. A man finishing his work, folding himself up like a shepherd's cloak at the end of the day. No struggle in it. The wrestler, at rest. Stand back now and look at the whole road at once. A hand reaching out of the womb, gripping a heel. The same hand ladling stew for a price. Goat skin strapped over smooth skin in a dark tent. A stone pillow under a runaway's head. A well stone rolled away alone. For love. 20 years of another man's fields. Heat by day and frost by night. 2 arms locked around a stranger by a black river, refusing to let go. A heap, touched once, ruined forever. A limp, carried across a border, through a brother's embrace, through 2 graves, through a famine, all the way down into Egypt. And at the end of everything, 2 old hands, crossed on purpose over the heads of children, giving away freely the very thing they once had to steal. That is the shape of one man's life, and it answers the question we opened with, how the thief of a blessing became the giver of them. And the answer refuses to flatter anyone. He did not become a different man in one night. After the river he still played favorites, and it cost him more than 20 years of grief. After the new name, he still went silent when his daughter needed a father. Still calculated. Still kept a careful distance from the brother who kissed him. Scripture itself keeps calling him Jacob to the very last page of his story. Jacob and Israel. Back and forth. Both names true at once. Because the old man and the new man walked all those years on the same 2 legs. And one of those legs never worked right again. That is what transformation actually looks like when it happens to a real person. Slowly, with scars, with relapses, across a whole lifetime, in the grip of a God who never once let go of his end. So if you are still wrestling tonight, with God, with your past, with the person you keep being, when you swore you would be someone else. This story leaves you with 2 things. The wound is not the proof that you lost, and the struggle is not the sign that you are far from God. When heaven chose a name for its people, it did not choose the peaceful one, the finished one, the one who never fought. God named his people after the man who grabbed on in the dark and would not let go. And forever after, when God introduces himself in Scripture, he says, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Not the God of Jacob, once Jacob straightened out, the God of Jacob. The wrestler still carried a limp, but he no longer had to grasp.